start with your history in regards to piloting and your experience in the questions that you had. But I want to go through a summary of what we just got through with, and I hate to get you to do that again, but if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, Philip, okay, here's it's basically description, let's see, my career. I'm a professional commercial helicopter pilot ever since 84. So that would be, 40, coming up on 44 years. Got about 15,000 hours in the air. Flown for quite a few different companies, even around the world. And really, the only things I've wondered about every time I fly in an aircraft are mainly two things. One is we're required to set one of the instruments in the aircraft. It's called a heading indicator. And that's an electrically driven instrument that is basically maintains a heading with a gyroscope that spins around inside about 16,000 RPM. Well, back in flight school, the books said, well, you have to readjust that instrument every 15 or 20 minutes because that instrument will experience what has been described in the books as a bearing drag, which means the bearings are heating up, they're creating friction, and they're causing that big gyroscope wheel to slow down. And that makes the instrument start to become in error. It just slows down and it's not accurate. So the question I've always wondered about, and I really know this for a fact, that a highly, very expensive actor to make it slow down.
Lost you there for a minute. A second there. Repeat that last 4 seconds.
Well, basically, if the gyro in the instrument is spinning at the optimum speed, which is about 16,000 RPM, it doesn't lose its ability to maintain its accuracy. So the only way it'll start to go off is if you turn it off or it loses its source of power. It will maintain a position in space. It will keep going in a straight line. But you have to keep setting that every 20 minutes or so. And that never made sense, but the only explanation in the book is bearing drag. And if you write that answer in the test that you take in order to become a pilot, well, then you get a right answer, and then they let you become a pilot.
What are they saying is the bearing drag?
Well, bearing drag, it's basically supposed to be when it's spinning around so fast, the gyro, it generates, friction and heat. And because of that expansion, it creates heat, and it makes it just creates excessive friction, and that slows the gyro down, and that's why the instrument goes off.
And according to them, it slows it down to the point that they can figure it out down to the minute for correction. I mean, in other words, how do they know which gyroscope is slowing down to that degree at that particular micromanaging level? Wouldn't it vary, I would think?
Well, it does, and they say that it's just a general kind of a ballpark figure, 15, 20 minutes. That's what I've experienced. So that's kind of a generally known fact that you've got to adjust it at those intervals. You might even go for 25 or 30 minutes with some of them.
But you don't.
To get a really cheap instrument.
You don't buy that as a reasonable explanation to reset the gyro.
Well, no, because if it has a governor, the governor keeps the RPM going, and that will not affect the inertia of the gyroscope is what maintains its direction in space.
Right.
So as long as that inertia
now
and weight continues at the same.
I just want to try to get their argument out. They would argue there is some sort of minuscule friction in regards to that bearing that can literally offset the reading by up to 4 degrees, I think is what you said previously.
Yeah, I'd say maybe 3 or 4 degrees, maybe even 5 after that time, and that's a good description. Minuscule is a good description because that means hardly measurable, and that's kind of follows suit that it wouldn't really be significant in the heading change either, but yet it is.
Okay. Now, a couple of questions here. I obviously we've gone through some of this before, but have you ever gone in a particular flight heading and not reset that gyroscope, for instance, like you were told to do?
I can't recall I've done that. Generally, it's a safety measure. You're supposed to do it, and I do it for safety because much of my work is when I fly. I know where I'm going anyway. I could pretty much close my eyes and get there. It's a helicopter, so you become familiar with the area, but still, you want to keep your instruments adjusted to where they reflect an accurate reading of your true heading. That's just a process of being a pilot. You got to do that.
But your point was this adjusting of the gyroscope wouldn't make a lot of sense in respect to a spinning ball.
Yeah, if you're on a sphere and you were flying from point A to point B, say, as far as my thinking goes, you wouldn't have to adjust your gyro at all because it would be flying in a straight line over a spherical surface according to your magnetic compass. But it does make sense on a flat Earth that I would have to adjust that instrument to fit my compass heading because if, like I stated before, if we're actually on a disk, a flat surface, and if we're flying, say, west to east, we'd be flying around that magnetic disturbance that, makes that magnetic compass react. Since we're flying around, just picture your old record player and picture the spindle that you put your record on. That's the North Pole. And we're going around the surface, the curved surface of the record. You're flying in a curved path around the record. But your gyro instrument doesn't want to do that. It wants to fly in a straight line across the record in a straight line.
All right.
So you've got to keep making that. You're actually making that gyro instrument. You're creating an error in the instrument. It's right. It doesn't need to be corrected. You're just making it to fit the compass.
Right.
You're making it go off course.
That's interesting. So the other point I wanted to bring out was we had talked about previously the 8 inches per mile of curvature is not something you're ever told to account for as a pilot. And certainly not in respect to the tools and instruments and mechanical instruments that you have. There is nothing available to a pilot to make this information known. In other words, once you get up to a particular altitude, it could be 10,000 or 30,000 feet, you're going to stay there until you pitch the nose down.
Yeah, that's true. And the thing is, pilots in general aren't physicists or engineers, so you learn that kind of a thing in college in that specific subject area. But basically, in all truth, pilots really, they don't need to know nothing. They just grab the wheel and they fly the aircraft. And in generally, I've spoken to a lot of aviators or pilots, as you call them, and they're not interested in talking about that stuff. It's just, you just keep the little airplane wings on the horizon, and that keeps you level. That's all pilots know, really. And they don't want to know anymore. They don't need to. They get a paycheck and they fly straight and level, and that's all they need to know. And in the aerodynamics books, they explain things like Bernoulli's principle and high and low pressure and laminar flow and all these aerodynamic stuff. And that's what you learn.
What was one of the things that hit you?
Does the horizon not need to be adjusted? It's just not brought up as a subject.
What was one of the main things that hit you as a pilot that brought you? Obviously, we didn't say this, but you're a Christian. You believe the Bible. But what hit you as a pilot? I think you mentioned it before. I think the bearing drag. But was there anything else in you can expand on the bearing drag if you like, that just caused you to really question this idea that we were on a ball, in a spinning ball?
Okay, well, other than the bearing drag, the secondary thing I would bring up, as I said before, was you have what's called an attitude indicator. That's a different instrument, but that keeps you flying straight and level. It keeps you from climbing or descending. It keeps you to the earth. So that instrument needs to be adjusted very infrequently. So I can't ever recall having to adjust it except on the ground. You generally set that instrument on the ground and it's good, at least in a helicopter, and it'll just stay good. You don't need to keep adjusting that little airplane to keep it level with the horizon. Well, even in a small aircraft, if you fly several hundred miles at 8 inches per mile squared times each mile, it's going to be like way off. And you should be in a constant climb and end up, 20,000 feet above where you started, but that never happens. Right. So that was another anomaly.
What, so for instance, I have my article up, where I was talking to my pilot friend. A lot of the comments are, well, you just don't understand how, flights work. What would you say to people that would come out and just say that we're loony? We just need to have a sixth grade education in regards to physics on what we're talking about.
Well, what I would respond to people, I've had these issues with people where, if you have a good friend, you can talk about this. If it's someone you hardly know or someone you're working with that you really don't trust all that much, well, if you don't keep your mouth shut, you're liable to get into some difficulty. So my response to someone, let me preface that by saying, I'm sure you've noticed that most people that you talk with, anywhere, they have a knee-jerk or an automatic reaction of, whoa, wait a second, see you later, forget that, I don't believe in that, that's nonsense. They haven't even bothered to consider it or research it at all, but yet their initial reaction is very hostile. It's a radical, very hostile reaction. So that's the nature of people, at least today. So I would explain and it doesn't bother me. I've grown to just become immune to that because what I know to be true, that's it. No one's going to change that. If they're interested in what I have to say, good. If they're not, that's good too. But I'm different. If someone said to me, Lee, the moon is made of green cheese, I wouldn't laugh or say, well, that's stupid. I'd say, that's an interesting theory you got there. Let me check that out for myself. That's the way I believe people should approach that, but they don't. So in response to someone, as the question you asked a minute ago, I would say, look, this is what I found out from my investigation, and from a biblical standpoint, the Bible is my science book, and I need to take that literally, which I do, and that's telling me plainly, without even have to think about it, that this place is basically, we're living on a flat surface, a circular disc, if you will. And then I work out from there. I don't start out somewhere in science and try to make the Bible fit science. I make science fit the Bible because that's the truth.
And of course, we're not arguing at this point that the Bible tells us about the genome and ways to do open heart surgery and things of that sort. What we're talking about is the basic concept of where mankind comes from, what we're living on, and I don't believe that any part of science has explained that in a scientific way, in the sense that it's observable, testable. We've been given a lot of photos. We've been given a lot of videos. I'm obviously with you regarding the moon landing. To me, I thought that was all but debunked. I mean, I can't even understand how people believe we went to the moon in 1969 and up until 1972, and we haven't been back. For decades. When we had the technology in 1969. And by the way, the technology included the idea of a delay of 2 to 3 seconds in regards to a person that was hundreds of thousands of miles away. I mean, my goodness, with all the satellites and everything we have now. So I'm with you on that.
Here's the main issue.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. Here's the main issue I see, though, and it's clear to me. If you focus on the Bible as the truth, and you have a good understanding of it, and I believe it's describing a flat or a relatively flat plane that we're living on, a circular Earth. Okay, if you start there, a layer of molten glass, and God sits on it looking down at us, which it says in the Bible. I've read it. If you know that to be true, then you can't go through the firmament. You can't go out. You can't go anywhere. So none of that other stuff is even possible. It's not even worth considering. But people try to draw you away from that understanding and grounding in the Bible. They try to get you into these little separate. Does that even matter? Because if you can't get there, then what does it matter? If you can't put rockets or satellites up there in the first place, how are you going to go to the moon? So if you're well grounded in this flat earth, biblical understanding of it, all of this other stuff you can see at its face, it's non-existent, it's not real. Because how would that happen if we're in an enclosed environment?
Right. If you were to, let me make sure I get this right. Were you a pilot for 40 years?
Yeah, 1976, out of high school, and it's 2018, so that'd be 42 years.
Okay. That's pretty amazing. You've been in the, let me ask you this, how high have you ever been?
Well, I've been in the commercial jets there. About I think the highest I've been was like 42,000 feet.
Oh wow!
And that's looking out of the window. You know, everybody's done that, but almost everyone. You look out, what do you see? Well, I see a flat horizon. I don't see a curve.
I wanted to set you up for this next question. I have encountered a number of people that say that you can see the curvature of the Earth from a commercial airline flight. And what I always bring up is the Mason, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who says you can't see it from that altitude. So I don't. It's first of all perplexing to me. Now, the only explanation I could have, if people are really convinced of that, is there are obviously curved windows that could distort the view of the outside. But Neil deGrasse Tyson himself, who's a confirmed Mason, admits you can't see it from that height. So what would you say to those people?
Well, I think that's absolutely true, and I believe that to be true. In the front, looking out of an aircraft, you have a significant curvature of that windscreen, and that will curve the image that you're looking at. So if you're looking at something straight, a straight horizon, it's going to curve it. And I've seen videos of cameras that go from the front around to the side where the glass is less curved, and the horizon goes from curved up front, flat, and back. And the other one is everyone seems to be into buying these. They're called GoPros, and they have a big fisheye lens. And even the people on the so-called space station up there, they're always shooting out of the windows with.
You're cutting out on me every couple of seconds here. Could be your signal, but
Okay, am I okay now?
yeah, you're good now.
Okay. Yeah. So it's assuming there's a space station up there, which I don't believe there is, but let's just pretend there is. They're all shooting out with GoPros. Well, even if the Earth were flat and they were somehow orbiting up there over a flat Earth, a GoPro is perfect for them because they're able to convince people that it's curving that flat horizon, and what a better way to do it.
I guess the last thing is, and I think we brought this up, but obviously I got to rehash this because I lost our first conversation. I appreciate you talking with me. I was discussing this issue with Dr. Kent Hovind regarding scripture. So let's forget the naysayers that don't believe in the Word of God in the first place. Let's talk about what we say to Christians that believe in the Bible at this point. That's obviously my field in calling on this. You've heard me debate Dr. Ken Hovind. Just in a summary point, let me just ask this: have you had any conversations with other Christians regarding the issue, and what have you said?
Well, I really haven't. I don't recall instantly any Christians that I've talked to this about. I've talked to some nice people about that, a few of them, but not very many, because you can't really trust a whole lot of people, especially in a professional setting. So generally, you don't talk about stuff like that. You just don't want to do that. It's not advisable. I've done a few things like that before, and it's not turned out very well at all.
Well,
because people
if you don't mind, describe one of the conversations you had when you brought it up.
Well, I brought up a lot of the things that we've talked about, and usually I don't get much more than a minute or two into it because I get this instant, like I said before, it was kind of a hostile, kind of a denial, knee-jerk. Boy, that's crazy.
It's almost like bringing up 9/11 in starting to point out. And here's the thing, I think we're probably on the same page. And if you don't mind, if I can call you by Lee, right? One of the things that I noticed in just bringing out 9/11, the first state of denial is not just unbelief; it's incredulity. I mean, people are obviously the second stage is they turn it goes into rage. I mean, and I can't help but think that when I was I went through this myself, and the mainstream narrative from our government regarding basically everything, it was almost like our Sunday school teacher. Really, we trusted the government the same way we would trust our pastor. you know. So there was a sense in which to disagree with the government was to disagree with your pastor. Therefore, you're not a patriot. You're not a Christian. I mean, it comes all together.
Yeah.
And what I noticed was people weren't interested in answering the questions or even looking at the facts.
Correct.
I brought up, just for an example, I found out that the architects for the Twin Towers built them to withstand jets flying into them, 707s at the time.
Yes.
I brought that fact out the other day, and it was just incredulity. There's no way. You're a liar. And I thought, well, hold on. I was literally waiting for the second argument of, that's fine. It was a 767 that flew into them. And I was like, that's fine. Yeah. Let's go that route. No, they don't even believe that they were built to withstand jets flying into them. I mean, they built them with that in mind.
Yes, that's correct.
So I got to tell you, there is so much resistance, and I really believe that this is a compounded deception that we're dealing with here, and that's why it's met with so vitriol and hatred. We're not just talking about a spiritual deception which is upon the heart, but we're also talking about I think a intellectual commitment that is bounded itself to a deceived system where people have to unplug from. And look, I think ultimately that's through the power of the gospel and God's grace. But what is most disturbing to me is, Lee, so many Christians today that I truly believe with all my heart are saved and set free and are justified because they believe in the person and work of Christ by faith. But they are the most deceived right now in regards to a lot of these things.
Well, I think they are, and the thing is, you have to maintain that faith and do the best you can every day. You can't just, at least I personally don't believe, if God saves you and you know that you're saved, you can't just go, okay, I can relax now. I don't have to really try anymore because I'm locked in. Well, I don't believe that, because otherwise, what would be the motivation to want to become better and closer to God and be more like He wants you to? It's a constant battle to do that as a man or a woman. So here's what I was thinking about before you called back. There's a saying that says the devil is in the details, and it doesn't say one detail; it says details. So it's a spider web of a lot of things that are causing this school of thought in so-called humanity. It's not just one thing. It's a myriad of deceptions. It's not just one. It's a whole lot of them.
No, and Lee, it's been going on for a long time now.
Well, yeah, but here's a theory of mine. I can't prove this, but I believe it in my heart. I believe that God's allowed me to know this. All these people that you want to give an example of, government people, you can go, how about Hollywood, the singers, all these famous people.
You're breaking up on me, Lee. Hold on. Come back.
Is better?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. But I was saying all of these people on the earth that you see as people with massive success and talent, I believe that the most impressive people that you can think of, which is probably hundreds, are all exquisitely possessed by the devil.
Huh.
So the demons themselves have taken possession. It's like what do you call it, the movie The Exorcist. Well, that's absolutely true. It's not a theory. It's biblical. People become possessed, but they think that's a good thing. They think, well, geez, I can different theories.
You broke up for me again, Lee. There's obviously a spot in your house that doesn't work. So um, I don't know if you can walk to a clearing or not. Are you still there?
Okay.
I hear you now.
Yeah. How about now?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. Well, real quick, all these successful people that we've all heard of, they're more than willing to let demonic influences into them because that makes them feel better about themselves, and they welcome it because that makes them smarter, more successful. So this is why all of the things that are going on now, they're literally inhabited by these demonic entities, and this gives them the plan. That's where they get this information to do this, and they're happy to do it.
I think there's something to that. Let me just add to that. I was thinking of Miley Cyrus, for example. I saw a particular meme that said these aren't gifted singers, they're witches, and they had every single musician you can name: Ariana Grande, Miley Cyrus, doing the one-eyed salute. In all of their pictures, we haven't even started on the Illuminati. I don't want to get away from the flat earth, but my point is, I think there's something to that. Their argument was they're using tools in software to actually correct their voice to the point. If you ever hear these people sing live, they're pretty awful. Singing live. Yep. Now, you put them in a studio, you tweak their voices a little bit, they don't miss any note. I tell you what's the most beautiful sound in my ears, though, is listening to choirs singing the old hymns. And you don't hear, because of the flood of the chorus, the higher and the stronger notes correct almost any other note that may be a little off, but I think most of the choir actually self-correct because there's so much beauty around them. And I'm a musician. Like I play the piano. I've sung and I've written music. This idea of solo artists is really kind of unconventional in the first place if you think about it. That one person, one voice can sing this way. And I can tell you this, I think Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses blew his voice out because he was screaming for so long. But I think there's something to what you're saying. One of my positions, and one of the ones that irks me the most, is this idea of sodomy. That is, it is not just being promoted mainstream. In regards to the West, it has gotten to the point that it's being accepted in respect of the churches to the point that elementary public schools are now allowing this to come in. And what I've always said is the church is to be the lighthouse to the world. If the church gets something wrong and the church becomes corrupted, the state gets the go-ahead. And I'm convinced that over the last few decades, probably century at least, maybe even more than that, it's been infiltrated by Masons and Illuminati agents like Rick Warren, Joel Osteen, you name them, you name them, Paula White, you name them. And
Rodney Howard Brown, all those people.
Right. And they get in there and it corrupts the light that's supposed to be in the lighthouse. And so it's not bright anymore. And that's the cue for the culture to say, okay, basically the church has been invaded. It's okay for Sodom and Gomorrah to commence. And I think that's what we're looking at.
Well, I've seen evidence. The church I go to a Seventh-day Adventist church. I do that for one reason, and that's because it's a Sabbath-keeping church. But in going there for over 20 years, seeing
All right, you cut out again.
because of that, I've seen that over time. I know that every church is corrupted. It's been infiltrated by either the Masons, the Jesuits. It's all a group effort to destroy what's left of Christianity.
Well, look,
It's
I'm
an all-out
I'm no
effort.
fan. I believe the Seventh-day Adventists get one thing right and everything else wrong. But look, I'm with you. I'm serious. I think they get the Sabbath right, but they're failing on every other issue. But look, I think look, I got to tell you, regarding everything that's happening today, you can't help but feel like there's an invasion that's occurring.
Well, yeah, it's just to dilute the churches and lose the truth that's still left in the churches. And I've seen that personally in my own church. But the point of bringing that up myself was that you can't be afraid to admit that your own belief system or your own organizations haven't been affected. You have to admit that at a certain point, and most people aren't set up to do that.
We don't have the ability to do critical analysis anymore. We were basically spoon-fed what to believe, whether it be in church or regarding politics. And I can't tell you the disparity between the nature of the church and the role of the state. It hasn't been larger. I know in the founding of the United States of America, in the original colonies, they were quoting the Old Testament law in its early contracts and constitutions. They were quoting it.
Yeah.
It's a very dangerous time to be alive now, to hear that if you get the wrong pronoun in regards to a man dressed as a woman, you may go to jail.
Well, yeah. The thing is, here's the main problem with the way people think today, and I know this for a fact. It's if we're created by God, we're created with free will. Correct?
Well, I don't believe in free will in the Arminian Roman Catholic sense. I believe we are sinners until God saves us.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is He created us with the ability to choose. Because if we can't decide on our own to accept Him or to deny Him, well, then we don't have free will. We're not able to freely do that. So He has to give us choice.
Well,
and
no, he has to give us a regenerate heart, and I think from that we freely choose to believe. But I believe
we don't have to, though. He doesn't force us.
No, he doesn't
have to
force
come to
us. He gracefully saves us. That's going to be a point of difference between us. But I don't resolve any of these issues through that exit off the highway. A lot of people do. I don't think that explains anything. I think that's just smoke. Free will doesn't explain anything. It doesn't explain why people choose what they choose. And why is it why is it some choose correctly and some don't choose correctly? I would just argue.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think you're misunderstanding me there. The point is, He made us with free will. That means we have the ability to choose anything. We're free people and free agents on the earth.
We choose we have the ability to choose what we want.
Correct. That's all I'm saying.
No,
But
and that's all I'm
he
saying.
was-
I'm going to say the problem is our want tos are screwed up.
Well, yeah, but I'm still trying to make my point.
I'm sorry.
He gave us the ability to choose and to have freedom. He gave us that. So man can't take that away. And he can't write new rules, and he can't write Patriot Act, and he can't write all of those things and take away the rights that we got from God. So people today, they don't know that. They haven't been taught that.
Right.
So if you told someone 242 years ago what I just said, they go, oh, of course. And if someone tried to arrest George Washington for jaywalking, he'd blow their head off. He'd go, get away from me. What are you doing?
No, I
So
see what
that's
you're.
how much the mindset.
No, I see what you're
What?
saying there. The issue is America's turned into a police state. That's part of a
Correct.
design. The agenda, and we're talking the same language at that point. I'm just saying theologically, men are slaves until they're set free. But I understand what you're saying in regards to America. Their freedoms as citizens have been exploited, sold, or given away in regards to corporate greed and political gain. I mean, 9/11. Look, you could go all the way back to the French Revolution, and I was looking this up, Lee. That was around the origins. Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Illuminati. That's going to be an article I'm eager to write about. I literally had a guy on a horse with a message on how to get the French Revolution started, struck by lightning. This guy knocked off his horse with the papers, and it falls into the authorities' hands of the French, and they don't act on it. It's like anything else in history. Here is the Lord giving you the knowledge. You're being exploited. You're being pimped by deceptive, demonic, pedophile psychopaths. What are you going to do about it? And I really feel like the fact that Trump got elected instead of Hillary was a good sign, in all honesty. Given the state of affairs in this country, people just had enough. And I think, at the same time, all this other crazy stuff is going on, I think there's another vein where people are waking up. I don't know where that's at spiritually to gauge it enough to know if that's going to last for a generation or not. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, back to the flat Earth thing. Here's the way I feel about that, Philip. I think there's something significant that's going to happen in that area. The reason why is because I'm sure you know as well as I do. If you're hitting a sore point, or if you're hitting home on a certain subject, you're going to get the more powerful your argument is, and the proof, the more violent the reaction. People don't want this getting out, and if they didn't consider it significant area of discussion, then deGrasse Tyson and Hawking and all these other people wouldn't be going on trying to get the YouTubes taken off and having counter arguments with all of this and calling people like us crazy. That wouldn't be happening. They're going, oh, you're one of those again. Yeah, don't worry about it. The reaction is significant, and they know that we're on point, and they're threatened by that. And that I see.
And look, Lee, I'm at this point in my life with the issue of the flat Earth. If it's round, I'm fine to recant, and I'll just go back to defending the Bible like I always did with the round Earth.
Yeah.
It's not as if I'm going to lose my religion over it. I'm just, and I'm not going to forsake God over it. I just want to see water curve over long distances. I want to see the rover on the moon. You can take that Hubble telescope and just turn it over there at any point, NASA. Just go ahead and do that for me.
Yeah.
I want to see some of these rockets go straight up into the air instead of arcing.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, the most convincing one is just put me on a rocket. I know some people probably just want to send me out of here anyway. But
they probably do. But all of these people that have went into space, so-called space, they're
all Masons.
Every
single one of them Masons. Every single one.
Yeah. And so that's why it's a closed loop. And they're in on this whole plot for universal deception. That may sound paranoid to some people, but it's not. That's actually what it is. And it's just it's a mind job, and they're succeeding with it. And people believe anything they're thrown. They go, well, they got pictures of the Earth. It's obvious. And they get pictures of the little things on the moon, and that's fine. So they believe in pictures and what they're told. And that's where we're at.
The moon.
People that ever
the problem is, the thing that disturbs me, Lee, is that most people aren't aware of all the lies. For example, the moon rock that was given to what, Holland, was proven to be a fake. It was a fake.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's okay, it's fine, but we still went to the moon, and I'm thinking. Well, okay, so let's talk about the $2.3 trillion missing on September 10th, 2001.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
Lee, it's
like coincidence.
Yeah. Go ahead.
People believe that. One guy that I really admire, don't know him personally, but I just think he had a lot of guts. And he interviewed.
You cut out. I'm waiting for you.
Still there?
Yeah, I'm sure Google doesn't like this conversation, but whatever. I got you.
Yeah. Anyway, I was talking about Bart Sibrel, in interviewing all the astronauts.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it.
He's been kicked, he's been punched, he's been thrown out of houses, he's been threatened. And that wouldn't happen if that had actually happened.
Well, I'll tell you somebody else, Wolfgang Halbig, in his investigation of Sandy Hook, he got the same reaction. In regards to that. I countless people that have died in regards to eyewitnesses of 9/11. And how about this? Eyewitnesses in regards to the Las Vegas shooting have also mysteriously just started dying all of a sudden. So, look, I got to tell you, this whole thing, in one sense, Lee, I can understand why people are afraid, right? Because this is a mind job, right? I mean, you have, part of, I got to tell you, I think when the Lord took me through this, and I've got a story, I'm not going to share it with you right now. I'm just going to tell you I had a panic attack. This was before Flat Earth. This was just pulling me out of the system. I had a panic attack. My dad said later that was demons. But Lee, I got to tell you, it was frightening. As a Christian, born again, saved Christian, to get to the point where you understand that you're literally sitting inside of a demonic, lying, deceitful government that kills its own people. That's frightening to people.
Well, you are. And the other thing is, as a Christian, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to go out and witness. But it doesn't do you much good if no one wants to listen to you.
No, but we have to do it. One of the things I put on my website recently was take no part in the works of darkness, but rather expose them. That's our duty.
Right.
That's our duty as Christians.
Well, yeah, but if you try to discuss this subject with someone, and you try it 4 or 5 times, and then pretty soon they go, no, get out of here. I don't want to see you again, or I'm going to, knock you in the head. Well, that's pretty much an indication that you just better leave that one alone.
Well, and look, I think, Lee, in all fairness, you and I were that way. I certainly had people in my life that that sowed seeds in that particular way. They didn't come full out on flat Earth or anything like that. But I think I think R.C. Sproul said it best. We're in an age now of technological advancement to where there's no excuse for people to continue to live in this level of ignorance.
Absolutely, but it's preventing them though. They're still not catching on. Hey, real quick, I wanted to mention something.
Sure.
There's a disc set I have. It's called "What Happened on the Moon," and
what a funny thing happened on the way to the moon?
No, it's called "What Happened on the Moon."
Okay.
And it was written. It's from England. There were a couple of researchers, and just interesting that Grumman, the company that built the lunar excursion module, it was a $6.9 billion project, only had a 110-page proposal, which is about the size of a comic book. So that's how they won, with a couple of simple drawings over everyone else. And
that's
so
amazing.
A lot of these whistleblowers come out in that disc, including a couple of rocket scientists, and just bullet point a lot of flaws in that whole thing there. So
that's amazing.
It's out there. It's an expose.
Well, look, we're nearing about a 60-minute end here. I really appreciate you talking to me. It's actually been double that for anybody listening. I'm going to upload this, but Lee, let's kind of just sum this up. We've touched on a lot of subjects here. I really appreciate you, by the way. God bless you. I really appreciate your courage. I'm obviously not going to give your full name, but I really appreciate you coming forward and contacting me about the flat Earth as a pilot and your concerns and your ability to articulate inconsistencies in flying. But let's sum this up. If you could summarize just everything we've talked about and just give a closing word to people that would be listening to this, what would you say?
Okay, well, I guess I would say this. Number one, the thing that attracted me to your site, as well as several others, but yours in particular, is the biblical references that some of them I haven't seen before. But you can go right to them, and it's even more impressive when you read it in your own Bible in your living room and go, okay, hold it. The earth is fixed. It's immovable. There's a big firmament up there. And if you pray for guidance and inspiration from God to learn that truth and know that that's true, the biblical references for anyone to go to your site, it's all there for them to read. And all they need is just pray about that and see if God will allow them to finally realize that that's true. So that was very important to me. As a pilot, I've discovered those inconsistencies we talked about, and no one is ever going to answer those. It's not a part of something that anyone wants to talk about. Just mark the right answer on a test, and you're good to go. And no, they don't want to. Number one, I've learned people don't want to be responsible for the truth. So to avoid that, they don't learn it. They don't want to know it. They refuse. That way they don't have to be responsible for it, because it takes action once you know the truth. That's pretty much all I got to say about it.
Well, that's right. Peter says it was better for them not to have known the way of righteousness than to have known it and then turn away. Well, Lee, look, I really appreciate talking with you. We've almost taken up 2 hours of our night tonight. We didn't get the first recording, but we got this one, and I thank you so much. I'm going to upload this on my channel. And look, I really appreciate you. I think the final answer is to fight for the truth, and God's word is truth. And
correct.
I think it's
but
as
you
simple
have to
as
start
that.
there.
Yes, right.
Don't start with science. Don't start with YouTubes. Don't try to make the Bible fit the science. You need to blend that science and make it fit with what the Bible says, because that is actually the facts. It's not all the theories. Those are the facts.
Well, it's our Creator's testimony of creation.
Correct. Does he know more about that than we do or not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lee,
Good.
thanks so much. Look, let's talk again soon. We got to do this again.
Do it. Give me a call.
All right. Well, take care, and thanks so much for your time, all right?
You bet. Thanks, Philip.